Hi, my name is Mark Cassignol, and I'm a product manager with IBM for watsonx.governance. Today I'm going to be talking about some updates to the risk and compliance capabilities of watsonx.governance as a service on AWS. So to kind of introduce these features, I'd like to take you through some workflows that kind of take these new features into account. So we're going to start with this first workflow here, which is related to the onboarding of foundation models. So when an organization wants to use a new foundation model, it has to go through some sort of onboarding process before it can be used within the organization. And as part of that, it's important to understand the risks that could be associated with this model. And for this purpose, we have partnered with IBM Research to create a risk identification assessment specifically for the onboarding of models. And this uses the IBM Risk Atlas, which is a free research tool that's available to learn about the risks associated with generative AI. Now, so whenever a new model comes in, you first kind of would have to capture some basic metadata about the model, kind of, what are the licenses, where is it hosted, and things like this. And then the model gets submitted for the onboarding assessment. So here we're assuming that the Risk Atlas library of risks has already been onboarded, and if the organization has any additional risks, they can also be included in this assessment, and it can be configured to use those risks as well. Once the assessment completes, the model is going to have a collection of risks associated with it. Each of these risks needs to go through what's called an RCSA, a risk and control self-assessment. This is essentially a process where the inherent and residual risk level of each of those risks can be assessed. And inherent risk being the level of risk if no mitigating actions are to be taken at all, and the residual risk being the remaining level of risk after any controls or other mitigations are put in place. Once that process is done, and by the way, throughout this process, we also have the ability to reject the use case. Maybe at this stage, if the risks are deemed by the organization to be kind of not within their risk tolerance, we can reject the model and maybe onboard a different model instead. If the risks are tolerable, then we move on to the next stage, which is determining which of these tasks we're actually going to approve for use within our business. So, generative AI models tend to have the ability to perform multiple different tasks. So things like classification, summarization, retrieval augmented generation, to name a few. And so it's important to document which of these different tasks or uses the model is approved for within the organization. And once that completes, the model is approved and it's ready to be used for prompt building. Now, the second workflow we're going to talk about today involves the use case creation and approval process. So it starts with the creation of an AI use case, which goes into a data gathering stage where basic metadata about the use case is gathered, things like if it's externally or internally facing, if there are plans to use generative AI for this use case, what's the purpose of the business problem that's trying to be solved here, and questions like that. This is something that can also be further configured by the end user if there are additional questions that need to be captured here. After the data gathering stage, the risk identification assessment for the use case kicks off. Now, this assessment, which again was something that IBM Research helped us develop, is more focused on questions about the business problem and the use case itself, and it is not model specific. The library of risks that is applicable here, though, is the same Risk Atlas library that we talked about earlier, and the applicable risks are automatically copied into the use case after the assessment completes. And similar to before, all of these risks go through the RCSA process to assess for inherent and residual risk, and then the use case is submitted for stakeholder review. Now, the stakeholders could be groups within the organization, such as the AI ethics committee, the legal department, perhaps a technical or development lead or development group. And the idea here is that stakeholders can all review the use case, determine if it meets the requirements that they have set out for them, and can give their approval or rejection here. So the use case as a whole can only be approved if all of the stakeholders who are involved give their approval. And so assuming that happens, the use case gets approved for development and moves on to the next stage, which we'll talk about now. So the third workflow we're going to talk about governs the development process for the AI project. So if you're using a non-generative model, then essentially what would happen now is the model developers would get involved. They would, for example, create a package in SageMaker and start building the model. Once this is complete, the development will be marked as complete to reflect this, and the model can be submitted to the validation team for a complete validation before it's ready for production. Now, in the generative AI case, there's a few additional steps, and one of them involves the third risk identification assessment that ships with watsonx.governance, which is related to the combination of the foundation model that is selected and the use case. So in this case, as you see in the top section of the workflow there, we select our foundation model, create some prompts, and then the assessment process begins. Now, this assessment is designed to elicit any potential risks that could arise from the combination of the use case and the model that was selected here. So it's a smaller assessment compared to the earlier ones that we discussed, but there is the possibility that some additional risks could be identified here. Now, those risks will go through the same RCSA process that we've already discussed, and now we have a complete risk profile of the use case and the model all integrated together. Once the risk assessment process is complete, the prompt template could be marked as development complete and submitted for validation, similar to the non-GenAI case. So this concludes the discussion today. If you'd like to learn more about watsonx.governance as a service on AWS, please scan the top QR code here. And the second QR code is for a blog post we have written about the integration between SageMaker and watsonx governance and how you can use it to implement an AI governance program at your organization. Thanks for watching.